how do we lead and manage the intention, commitment, determination, spirit, will, enthusiasm, creativity, and imagination of people? The solution to the challenge is not to be found in management techniques and formulas. Management techniques and formulas belong under the heading of mechanisms in our equation, which is not to trivialize their role. It is simply to recognize that they are not the tools of leadership. We now add 3 more words on our graphic under the word intention: context, culture, and space. A 10 under the heading of intention requires that we manage the context of our organizations with consummate skill. Associated with the word context are the words culture and space. We will define context as the whole situation, background, or a set of interrelated conditions in which something exists or occurs. Most of us who will lead and manage organizations believe that at the end of the day, we get paid for results. Of course, if we don't get the result, we usually have our reasons. In some organizations, people who have really good reasons for not getting results seem to get more attention than the people who actually get results. We tend to plan and act as if it were action alone that determines whether or not we get the result. If we take a set of actions and get the result, we tend to institutionalize the actions in a set of policies and procedures that we call process. If we don't get the result, we usually presume that the problem is in the action department. We think that perhaps we were not persistent enough, so we need to do more of the action. Or perhaps we weren't quite good enough, so we focus on taking better action. Or we decide that we took the wrong action, so now we look for different actions we could take instead. We almost never take a time out to consider the whole situation, background, or set up interrelated conditions in which the actions were taken. In other words, we almost never focus our attention on the challenges of context. We will now take some time to explore the nature and implications of context. The idea here is that context has an enormous influence on whether or not the actions we take are effective. We are going to use sets of words to describe contextual possibilities. As we do this, think about your own organization and get a sense of which words best describe it. For example, is the context of the organization confrontive or avoidant? In many organizations, people are reluctant to have difficult conversations. In fact, difficult conversations may be avoided at all cost, and the cost is great. In highly effective organizations, people are willing to confront the real issues and have the difficult conversations in a direct yet constructive way to seek resolution. Next, ask yourself whether the context of the organization is accountable or blaming. By accountable, we mean, are people in the organization clear about the consequences of their own actions or lack of action in relationship to an outcome? Or do they tend to blame others for what does or does not happen? In outstanding organizations, people focus on fixing the problem, not the blame. Is the organizational context one of listening or arguing? Do people in the organization listen to one another and seek to understand what is being said? Or while others are speaking, do people prepare their argumentative rebuttal instead of really listening? In a world of global business relationships, the challenge of understanding is even more difficult. We are likely to find ourselves using English as the common language when it may be not anybody's native language. The failure to pursue shared understanding can easily lead to a climate of distrust and the disintegration of a relationship. In our own consulting practice, we have worked with clients whose valuable global alliances have been threatened with breakup as a result of misunderstood communications. A climate of misunderstanding can continue for many years, destroying the level of trust required for an alliance to work. Which brings us to another characteristic of context: trust. Are there high levels of trust or high levels of suspicion in the organization? Indeed, the topic of trust is worthy of a whole program. Books have been devoted to the subject. Certainly, it is very difficult to get anything worthwhile to happen in organizations that have low levels of trust and instead have high levels of suspicion. What most of us don't know about trust is that it has to be actively managed. Trust is essential to all organizations. A core function of leadership is the management of trust. The main determinants of trust are honesty, reliability, and constancy. Research studies show that people would much rather follow individuals they can count on, even when they disagree with their viewpoint, than people they agree with, but who shift positions frequently. Next is the context of the organization, creative or conventional. In conventional and often bureaucratic organizations, people tend to focus on policies and procedures to make sure they are doing things right. In creative organizations, people focus on doing the right things well. The focus is on excellence rather than perfection. The obsession with perfection is damaging to the creative process. I can remember as a child, I was so obsessed with doing things perfectly that the thought of beginning a new project would feel overwhelming. My mind would get trapped in the obstacles to perfection, leaving me without the energy to act. A contextual requirement for high levels of creativity in an organization is that new ideas are nurtured and not attacked. We find that in many organizations, people endlessly play the role of the devil's advocate in the name of intellectual honesty. This inevitably leads to a climate in which people fear they will be negatively judged or attacked when they present new ideas. So they don't. Research studies reveal that 85% of the new ideas that lead to real breakthroughs come from people who tend by nature to be quiet and introverted. These are also the people who do least well in an oppositional environment in which they experience devil's advocacy as personal attack. This is also an issue of trust. To get the benefit of people's imagination and creativity, we must create a climate in which people trust that we will be kind to new ideas and give credit where credit is due. To achieve high levels of creativity, we also need an organizational context that is courageous rather than fearful. High levels of fear, usually caused by the use of fear-based management practices, is incredibly damaging to the ability of an organization to produce sustainable results. Courage, of course, is not the absence of fear. Courage is the willingness and ability to take creative action in the presence of fear. What we are talking about here is a commitment to not use fear as a management tactic. We need to lead and manage the process of risk-taking. The nature of many people is to live in what we call the comfort zone. Life in the comfort zone is often warm and fuzzy. But if we want a warm feeling, we should take a bath. If we want higher levels of performance, we need to build a courageous organization in which people strive to live in the high performance zone rather than the comfort zone. It is in the high performance zone that we experience high levels of personal satisfaction as we explore the outer limits of our own abilities. We will not do this, however, if we do not trust the organization is committed to our learning and development. As leaders and managers, we also need to practice risk management, which requires that we can differentiate between perceived risk and actual risk. We need to know what represents an acceptable risk and what doesn't. The taking of unacceptable risk places our organization and us in the danger zone. Life in the danger zone is unsustainable. Today there is a great deal of business conversation and literature devoted to the idea that we must function well in teams. Whether or not in a business system people function well in teams is very dependent on context or culture. At this point, we probably need to develop the meaning of the word culture as it applies to organizational life. Broadly defined, the meaning of culture includes the ways of thinking, communicating, and behaving that a group or organization of people has in common. Culture can be thought of as the result of the development, improvement, or refinement of the mind, emotions, and interests, meanings, and values of a group or organization of people. It is our experience that very few corporate cultures are consciously created. Most business systems end up with the corporate culture that happened while they were making other plans. Exceptional companies have thoughtfully designed and skillfully implemented corporate cultures. People who work in the culture of an exceptional company are very clear about what is expected of them in terms of behavior and results. In these companies, how people behave in the process of getting results is as important as the results themselves. Tom Hoffmann and I have been working with MasterCard International during the last couple of years. Working together, the people of MasterCard came up with a set of team operating principles to describe the behaviors that were valued. I would like to share them with you. Be open, honest, and direct. Be fair and caring. Treat each other with dignity and respect. Inspire teamwork through example. Accept personal accountability. Promote balance between professional and personal life. Encourage new ideas. Cultivate personal development and an enjoyable working environment. Execute with excellence. And celebrate and reward successes. These operating principles are prominently displayed throughout MasterCard's global offices. One of the employees came up with the idea of printing the operating principles on a card, appropriately enough, the size of a MasterCard credit card. One side of the card is colored green. The other side of the card is colored red. If during a meeting a person is perceived to be in violation of the operating principles, someone else in the meeting will wave the card displaying the red side, signaling a violation. And to be fair, when someone in the meeting is modeling the operating principles in an exceptional way, people will wave the card in the air displaying the green side in enthusiastic support of outstanding behavior. MasterCard is now proposing that senior managers have pay at risk for whether or not they walk the talk of the team operating principles. When the commitment is made in an organization to build a high-performance culture, all the messaging must be consistent with the desired behaviors. All business processes and human processes in the business must also be aligned to support the valued behaviors. The absolute importance of constantly working to align all actions and messages to the desired cultural traits cannot be overemphasized. This is the essence of implementation. The ability of people in an organization to work as a team is highly dependent on culture, because in the process of growing up, most of us have been conditioned to function individually and competitively. Expecting people will come together and work in functional teams is in conflict with what has become many people's nature. A strong culture can overcome old habits. Corporate presidents and CEOs who have successfully taken on the challenges of developing effective team-based behaviors in their organizations report that success took more time and was much more difficult than they imagined. The rewards, however, were also much greater than they had hoped for. These business leaders also discovered that the cost reductions resulting from people working together in effective teams are very significant. To have people in an organization come together and work in functional teams rather than focus on individual effort requires that the business and the people process of the organization recognize and reward human behaviors that are consistent with team behaviors. All too often in organizational life, we demand team-like behavior, but we reward individual achievement. This leaves the people who have committed themselves to working as a member of a team feeling devalued. As leaders and managers, we must say we want people to collaborate. But having said they must collaborate, we'll have a reward system that promotes individuals who excel individually. The net result of such a system will be to encourage internal competition rather than collaboration. While we may have been taught that competition is a good and wonderful thing, a significant case can be made that this is not true. In fact, within an organization, competition is almost always a dysfunctional idea. The concept of collaboration rather than competition and our personal best as a member of a team rather than individual effort while working alone probably deserves more time than we have today. As leaders and managers, we must learn to empower people rather than to consolidate our own power. The word empower is suffering from overuse without the meaning being clearly understood. Essentially, to empower a person or a team of people means that we enable them to take action. This implies that we trust them and requires that they trust us, not to continually second-guess the actions that they take. Another way to say all of this is that we must create and give people the space or the room to take action that is consistent with the vision and the values of the enterprise. There is so much to become aware of and to learn about, which brings us to perhaps the most important aspect of organizational context or culture. Have we built a learning organization? Are we able to learn the truly useful lessons to be found in our own mistakes? Or do we defensively go about trying to prove that we are not to blame? Beyond learning from our mistakes, do we have an organizational culture that is effectively committed to the learning and development of people? In a world that is becoming increasingly technology-driven, we can be inclined to focus our learning and development efforts on the demands of technology. There's a certain amount of irony in this. The availability of technology facilitates complexity. Increasing complexity can result in people feeling more inadequate and therefore more fearful. Technology cannot respond to these feelings. This requires people skills. To make matters worse, as traditional education focuses on the skill sets and competencies demanded by technology, people skills become a rare commodity. We were conducting a leadership workshop a few years back in which an engineer by the name of Harry Noble stood up and shared why he had become an engineer. He said that, growing up, there were only two kinds of people he had trouble with: men and women. He thought that becoming an engineer would be a perfect solution to his problem. He liked the world of things and learning about what made them work. Trying to understand how people worked seemed too challenging. Harry became a very good engineer. So good, in fact, that the company for which he worked had made him a project manager. Now he was required to lead, manage, and understand people, the very thing he set out to avoid in the first place. The dilemma of Harry Noble gets played out again and again in business organizations all around the world. The real Harry Noble recognized his dilemma and had the courage to commit to a new field of learning. He understood mechanical and electrical systems and recognized now that he had to learn about human systems. Most of all, and requiring the most courage of all, Harry had to learn about himself. In Harry's case, there has been a happy outcome. Harry developed himself to become a good leader and manager, as well as a happy husband and father. Unfortunately, satisfactory outcomes like this are the exception rather than the rule in a modern world. Exceptional organizations are very good indeed at leading and managing their human assets. Certainly, these organizations have excellent mechanisms in place, mechanisms that are continually reviewed and improved. However, these mechanisms absolutely rely on cultural context for their effectiveness. Mechanisms have no power independent of human intention. It is human intention, focused by a well-conceived and implemented culture, that provides the organizational power to succeed and the power to turn a vision of success into the reality of success. Warren Bennis, in one of his numerous essays, writes about the effects of leadership. Leadership can be felt throughout an organization. It gives pace and energy to the work and empowers the workforce. Empowerment is the collective effect of leadership. In organizations with effective leaders, empowerment is most evident in 4 themes. People feel significant. Everyone feels that he or she makes a difference to the success of the organization. The difference may be small. The prompt delivery of potato chips to a mom and pop grocery store, or developing a tiny but essential part for an airplane. But where they are empowered, people feel that what they do has meaning and significance. Learning and competence matter. Leaders value learning and mastery, and so do people who work for leaders. Leaders make it clear that there is no failure, only mistakes that give us feedback and tell us what to do next. People are part of a community. Where there is leadership, there is a team, a family, a unity. Even people who do not especially like each other feel the sense of community. When Neil Armstrong talks about the Apollo explorations, he describes how a team carried out an almost unimaginably complex set of interdependent tasks. Until there were women astronauts, the men referred to this feeling as brotherhood. I suggest they rename it family. Work is exciting. Where there are leaders, work is stimulating, challenging, fascinating, and fun. An essential ingredient in organizational leadership is pulling rather than pushing people towards a goal. A pull style of management influence attracts and energizes people